Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, what is up, what is good? The king, the king of lightning here today, bringing you guys, One Piece. Whoa. Chapter 910 and 911, official Viz chapter review. Now, here's the thing. I did a live reaction of 9/11. I did. However, that live reaction, which I did on twitch.tv, link in the box below, of course, as always, and you should follow me there. Absolutely. The thing here is that stream, that VOD, number one, on Twitch itself has an error message, and no one can see it. Whatever's going on there, not too sure. Unfortunately, the VOD is still corrupted. There's an error message there. No one can actually watch it. It's a Twitch issue, so hopefully in the future be fixed, but as of yet, it's been a week or almost a week, and no mas, number one. Number two is that I failed to record it myself via OBS, so far only 1,100 plus cats who are there during my stream, only they have seen this live reaction of 9/11. But we're going to talk about here in this chapter review in very precise, systematic details here. And of course, the Viz chapter is in front of you, and you guys should definitely check out the Viz itself because that's the best quality translation because it's the Viz translation. So, first and foremost, let's start with 910 because 910 has had some folks on the fence when it comes to the chapter from a quality standpoint. So I'm here to break it down systematic, step by step. Of course, we have the pacing, then we have the story progression, and finally we have the character components for these chapters. And first of all, again, 910 of One Piece WoW. Number one, let's start with the pacing here. Now, when it comes to the pacing of this chapter, there's literally only one thing for this chapter when it comes to pacing, and that is essentially us following the Straw Hat crew as they journey to Wano Kuni and then landing in Wano Kuni through various means. But that is the general pacing of this chapter. It is extremely simple, very straightforward when it comes to overall chapter pacing and chapter structure. And the one component can be broken down into smaller sub-components. So sub-component number one is them talking about the Reverie, as you see before you via the newspaper. Sub-component number two is when they arrive at the entrance of Wano Kuni itself, and then we see how the waters are very turbulent, the weather is fairly ominous, and so on and so forth. Subcomponent number three of the pacing is the koi fish arriving, and the koi fish essentially being their guide to get into Wano Kuni. And by the way, this picture right here, on a side note, this picture right here is actually a fairly famous Japanese painting. I forgot what it was called, but this is a fairly famous Japanese painting that Oda has recreated in this particular panel right here of this chapter. But we have the koi fish, and they follow the koi fish through this very turbulent river system as they get to the waterfall area, and then Luffy even uses the koi fish, grabs onto them, and so they're able to take the Sunny Go with them up this waterfall, this gigantic waterfall, and then finally, boom, Luffy arrives at the shores of Wano Kuni, but he's by himself. So from that standpoint of pacing, it's extraordinarily simple, straightforward once again. From pacing standpoint, I would say it is subpar. I would say it is a 5 out of 10 flat out. A flat out 5 out of 10, subpar. So that is number one for this chapter, and that is the pacing of this chapter. Number two is the story progression for this chapter. And for this, we have actual genuine parts. Not subparts, but actual genuine components that have weight for this arc itself as well as the overall story. And for this, we have 5 parts to this chapter, going all the way back to the beginning. So number one here is clearly news of the Reverie is being spread around the world via the newspaper, and they're finding out who's the Reverie. They're finding out about the Ryugu Kingdom, the fishermen, that they have finally arrived at the Reverie in the first time in 200 years, which is really, really big news. And so when we saw all those news reporters at the Red Port during the Reverie, we now know that most of the world is aware of what's going on via the newspaper, which in itself is not necessarily a big thing, but still a component of story progression. If something does happen at the Reverie, because we have Cobra to ask some very hard-hitting questions and so on and so forth, the world is already aware who is going to the Reverie because of the reporters at the Red Port. And on top of that, knowing that the fishermen are there, in the first time in 200 years, a lot of folks' eyes are going to be on the Reverie. Number two, when it comes to story progression, is Nami is aware that something is going down with Kaido and Big Mom. So through the antics of Chopper and Sanji, because Sanji likes his princesses and Chopper likes his Dr. Kureha, it is what it is there. They cut out the piece of newspaper. We see that in the back, when Chopper's cutting, if I can zoom in all the way, we see the pictures of Big Mom and probably Kaido as well. This is probably Kaido. So Kaido and Big Mom. And Chopper is cutting through their faces and chunks of the text because he wants to keep that picture of Dr. Kureha. So then zooming back out for a bit here, we have Nami then say, wait, is this an article about Kaido? And Big Mom is what? I can't read it. So Nami, at the bare minimum, I can't see the entire crew because Chopper and Sanji are in their love zones, and Luffy, I doubt, cares. And then as far as I can tell, Brook is not really aware of what's going on, neither is Carrot. So Nami is aware that something's going on with Kaido and Big Mom, and that's all she knows. So if something does happen in Wano Kuni pertaining to Kaido and Big Mom, then she might refer back to this moment where she's reading the paper, but she couldn't read the entire thing because of the antics of Sanji and Chopper. And speaking of which, if you zoom in all the way here, we can see that something is splashing near the Strat ship, which we'll get to later on in this review of 9-10. But let's continue here. Now the next thing here, number 3, is Luffy trying to contact Kinemon through a transponder snail. Kinemon told him to do so when they were near the entrance of Wano Kuni, and they're trying to get contact with Kinemon, but they can't do so. There is no signal to be found, and I quote, "Nope, no response. Forget it. Let's just keep going." So they're trying to get contact with Kinemon and company, but no luck. And again, we see a tentacle here of an octopus that is basically near their ship. The tentacle, basically, number 4, the octopus is on their ship. Now, this, of course, is story progression, but it only lasts for like a chapter and a half, because in the next chapter, we see the result of the octopus being there. Though I don't doubt that this octopus is going to play a bigger role later on in the arc. I don't doubt at all. The octopus snuck on board their ship, and the only person that's aware of this octopus is Carrot right here. Carrot is just staring at this giant octopus. Brook, Nami, Sanji, Chopper, and Luffy have no idea that this octopus stealthed on their ship. Ridiculous. Number 5 for the story progression is we get to see how the waters work at the entrance of Wano Kuni. The entrance is a very dangerous and turbulent area. And from the standpoint of geography and location, it's also a key reason as to why Wano Kuni is isolated. And Brook notes as well on the next page. So if I can zoom in real quick. Brook says, "The weather's always bad, so we have no choice but to go through it. If the samurai are mighty and it's hard to get in, no wonder it's a closed nation." So that's part of the reason why. Anybody were trying to evade Wano Kuni, they'd have to get through all of this. So, assumingly, Kaido got through all of this. Kaido got through all of this and took over Wano Kuni. So, let's say the Marines, at some point in Wano Kuni's future, the Marines may try to go there, and the Marines may try and quell whatever's going on between Kaido and the Shogun and potentially Big Mom. In fact, Big Mom, she may have a way around this, and she can manipulate the weather itself. Well, that was with Prometheus and Zeus, but right now it's Zeus with Nami. So it's a bit, we'll see how it goes in the future when it comes to Big Mom. But Big Mom should also have to get through this as well. The same goes for the Marines and any other people that want to get to Wano Kuni. The weather is going to be an issue when it comes to arriving at Wano Kuni. And also probably when it comes to leaving Wano Kuni as well, which is part of the reason why they're so isolated. And then finally, number 6 for the story progression is Luffy arriving at the shores of Wano Kuni. We have the Sunny Go beached. The rest of the crew, Sanji, Nami, Chopper, and so on, they are nowhere to be seen. And now Luffy sees these beasts engaging in combat. That is all one component when it comes to the story progression, because it's the moment he actually arrives at Wano. It's all done in one culmination where we see the Sunny Go beached. We see Luffy wake up. We see that he's at the shores of Wano Kuni. We don't see Sanji, Nami, and company. And then we see these beasts fighting. And we get a sense of the creatures of Wano Kuni. So essentially, that is one part. And that is the overall story progression of this chapter so far. And all in all, I would say it's a 6.25 out of 10. That's an okay to okay plus on my rating scale. And the reason why is because most of this stuff is not big an impact at all. Granted, the biggest thing here is, of course, arriving at Wano Kuni. But then also you have the map stuff where we get to see the outskirts of Wano Kuni and how dangerous it is to actually get into Wano Kuni and how the waters are very turbulent, and then you have to navigate these waters, and then on top of it, there's this giant, you can see like the ocean itself, the winds are very strong, the water is crazy, and then we see this giant waterfall, so it's very hard to get into Wano, clearly. So we get a sense of that from a world building and map standpoint. But aside from those two things, the rest of the stuff is fairly minor. So story-wise, it is going to be a 6.25 out of 10 for the overall story progression of this arc. And then finally, when it comes to character, this chapter has 0 for character. Now, granted, you could make the argument here that maybe the octopus is a part of the character component of this chapter. But this octopus appears to be very different. It has that weird top knot thing, not top knot, the thing that goes, I forgot how you call it, but he has the headband thing. The octopus does seem to be sentient, but that's all I can really give it so far. It has a Japanese design to it, and it's sentient. And it stands on its tentacles like a person would on their legs. So the octopus, you could say, okay, fine, character for it. But it's so minimal aside from its appearance and its potential knowledge. Very little. It's more like, honestly, 0.5. If you want to actually want to make it a couple for character, like actually the octopus. But I would say just a flat out 0. A flat out 0 when it comes to character for this chapter, and that leaves the overall chapter rating at a subpar plus. So a 5.5 out of 10. And when you look at this chapter from the greater scheme of the story, the arc itself does start off fairly fast-paced as a whole, because Luffy and company have already arrived at Wano, which I know some folks argue is the norm, but it's not. It really isn't. Especially when in the same chapter, you introduce a hurdle for him to overcome. Out come outside forces to assist him in said hurdle. Like, big time. Not even, like, at the end of the chapter. The next panel, outside forces appear to swiftly guide them through all these obstacles, because they follow the koi fish. And then they use the koi fish to then climb up the waterfall, which, of course, would have been a big obstacle in itself. Like, when you think about how they had to go to Skypiea. In Skypiea, they had to prep for Skypiea. And then after the prep work, and then after diving into, like, the abyss for like a few minutes, they then could arrive at Skypiea by using the knock-up stream. And it was fairly well crafted and organized on the part of Nami and Usopp Company, that kind of stuff. But in this case, it's just the koi fish use them, and then boom, we're at the shores of Wano Kuni. It's kind of like a random giant eagle swoops out of nowhere, grabs the merry-go, and carries them to Skypiea. That'll be the equivalent here. And then in the process, Luffy loses track of his crew. That's very fast-pacing stuff. Like, Oda is really making this beeline rush to Wano for the main crew, for Luffy and company, and boom, here we are. And then also on one final side note, when it comes to the beginning of this chapter, it was only 6 or 7 chapters without Luffy, but Oda still finds it necessary to give us this. Captain of the Straw Hat Pirates, Straw Hat Luffy, bounty 1.5 billion. I'm like, what? As if we needed that. I find that amusing. So, from an overall story standpoint, from an overall arc standpoint, this chapter, from a pacing standpoint, is very, extremely fast. And I would argue, unusual. Definitely. And the chapter itself has no strong components of character at all. The pacing is very simple, very straightforward. Like, it's very cookie cutter. Just the crew and what they're doing, which in itself is fine, but it's still only one part overall. And then you have the story progression, which is the best part of this chapter, and even that was relatively okay. So the chapter rating for this chapter is a subpar plus. That's going to be a 5.5 out of 10. And that is chapter 910 of One Piece Walk. And now we move on to chapter 911 of One Piece Walk. And this chapter has way more substance than 910. 910, again, 5.5. I think it's a fair rating for that chapter, considering, again, the lack of character and how simple the pacing was. Not a bad chapter. By no means is it a bad chapter, but still subpar. This chapter, though, way more substance in all avenues. Not only clearly in the sense of character, but for story progression as well as pacing for this chapter. So, let's dive headfirst into the pacing and chapter structure of this chapter. Number 1 is that we have Luffy right here, one page, first page, recalling what happened. Then number 2 is a flashback of what happened. Then number 3, we follow Luffy in real time for the rest of the chapter until the very end of the chapter at number 4, Basil Hawkins. That's it. From a pacing standpoint, it is better than the previous chapter, without question. Though it's still relatively simple and straightforward. So from a pacing standpoint, this chapter is going to get a 6 out of 10. A 6 out of 10. So once again, the majority of this chapter is us following Luffy and his adventure, if you would, from the shore to the deeper areas of Wano Kuni, following Otama, but we'll get to her real soon. So that is number 1 for this chapter. Once again, that is the pacing of this chapter, which once again is a 6 out of 10. Number 2 for this chapter is going to be the story progression of this chapter. And for this, we have 8 components to this chapter. A lot more compared to the previous chapter, but on top of that, arguably a lot more substance when it comes to the story progression. Number 1 when it comes to story progression is that we see what happened with the rest of the Strat crew. So essentially, Sanji carried Brook, Chopper, Nami, and Carrot off of the ship. He skywalked alongside with using Luffy's Fusen so he can cap himself even further. Luffy himself was going to escape too, but then the octopus holds him down and he gets sucked into the whirlpool, and that's how he arrives with the Sunny Go here at this shore area. So that is number 1 for story progression. They're probably still near where they are, but at the same time, it's not certain because where they are at the top of this waterfall area could be entirely different than where Luffy is currently because he got sucked into the whirlpool and then from there, God knows where. But nonetheless, they're still in Wano probably. Now, the next thing here, number 2, is Luffy lost his Vivid card. As far as I know, that's the only Vivid card that I recall Luffy having on himself, was his own Vivid card. Because that's the one that Sabo gave to Zoro when Luffy was knocked out towards the end part of Dressrosa. He took a piece for himself and then gave the rest to Zoro. Not only that, but that Vivid card was also distributed among the Grand Fleet members. So Orlumbus, Cavendish, Bartolomeo, Sai, and so on and so forth. That is the only Vivid card that I recall Luffy having on his person, his own Vivid card, and he has lost that at sea. My guess here is that it's going to come up again at some point later on. Whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, not too sure. It could be it could be both. But a bad thing where it's an enemy. Out of sheer curiosity, they want to follow the Vivid card, then boom, they want to be Luffy. But I still think it's going to play a role in the future of this arc, or if not the entire series. Now, number 3 for story progression is Luffy meeting Otama, aka Tama. Now, Tama, at this point in time, clearly a character who's going to have some weight later on this arc, without exception. So now number 4, Otama explains to Luffy where he is. So he asks, anyway, what I wanted to know is, are we in Wano right now? And then Tama responds, yes, this is Kuri, in the land of Wano, Big Bro. And Big Bro is actually pronounced Aniki. So this confirms that right now, yes, this shoreline area, this is Wano Kuni. And not only that, but it's a place called Kuri, which I'm assuming is the name of this, let's say, province in Wano Kuni. So when it comes to geography, when it comes to world building, when it comes to location, that's a point right there. Kuri in the land of Wano Kuni. That's where Luffy is currently right now with Tama. Now, number 5 for story progression is finding out what the Kozuki clan means right now in Wano Kuni. She, when she dealt with Kaido's men, said this: when the Kozuki clan comes back, you'll be in big trouble. And then she tells Luffy, I accidentally said something that was against the law. So it is important to know here that according to what Tama is stating and indicating, if you openly support the Kozuki clan, that is against the law. Now, number 6 for the story progression is where the Sunny Go is currently. The Sunny Go is at the coastal area of Kuri, and the waters still seem to be fairly rough here, but that's where the Sunny Go is being stored currently. So at some point, they have to go back to Kuri, and probably, I'm assuming Frankie on his own will do it, because Frankie has done before in the past, but that being said, at some point they have to return here to get the Sunny Go, of course. Number 7 for story progression is jumping all the way to Otama's current condition, where because of what she did in feeding Luffy, and she couldn't calm her own stomach from growling and her hunger pang, she decided to drink some of the water that was nearby, but that water apparently is contaminated, if I can get a zoom right here. And so she drank some of this water, but because of her age, size, and gender, and so on and so forth, the water has affected her like it's poison. And at some point, I'm assuming that she would need medical treatment at some point. And if Chopper is nearby, that should be a cinch. But right now, where Chopper is, again, we don't know. Number 8, right here, apparently, in this area, Kaido has factories. The runoff from these factories has polluted the waters, which caused the water to be contaminated in the first place, which, of course, is a big issue, which, of course, will be resolved by either Frankie. I say Frankie because Frankie kind of resolved the issue with the small factory in Dressrosa. So Frankie or Luffy, maybe Law, who knows. And then number 9, I said 8 accidentally at the beginning of this section, so it should be 9. And then number 9, when it comes to the story progression, Basil Hawkins, Animal Kingdom, Beast Pirates, headliner, Animal Kingdom, like it's the animals, man. Beast Pirate headliner, Basil Hawkins. After the incident where Kaido just fell, Basil Hawkins has decided, you know what, I'm in. Hey, Kaido, whatever you're selling right now, I'm in. I'm all in. That's, because that right there is the result of when Kaido baby shakes you. When Kaido baby shakes you, you win. Because Kaido is that nice. Kaido is that devastating. And you have to wonder, would Killer betray his captain and join too? I don't know. We know that kid, he got the run through. He's in prison, bloodied up. I don't know. We haven't seen Killer yet. So at worst, Killer has passed away off screen. At worst. Probably not. That being said, Hawkins is in, and Hawkins is actually going to head over to the location where he lost the signal of his men, because those guys that are going to that shore area where Luffy was, they were apparently Hawkins' men. The men that Kaido gave him. Love it, love it, love it. So those are the 9 components when it comes to story progression for this chapter. Overall, when it comes to story progression, a good plus, definitely. That is a 7.5 out of 10 for this chapter. This chapter for story progression within the arc itself is fairly good.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute.
By the way, before we go into character, one last thing. I forgot this entirely. But when it comes to story, I don't know how I did. Because I was so pissed about Basil Hawkins. I'm sorry. Number 10, there's actually 10 parts to this chapter when it comes to story progression, is that Otama has been waiting here at this location, even though she could leave. She has been waiting here for quite a bit of time because she promised to stay here for a pirate by the name of Ace. Now, of course, this shocks Luffy, and we're assuming that this is Portgas the Ace. It could be a different Ace, but I highly, highly, highly doubt that. So that being said, most definitely that is a component of story progression. I actually forgot about that. I don't know why. Excuse me. The actual range for this chapter, when it comes to story progression, it is honestly, from an overall standpoint of pacing, fairly fast. Like, it really, really is. But nonetheless, the rating now is going to be an 8, because Otama has waiting here this entire time for Ace. That's a big thing right there. That's a big thing for story, because now Ace is going to come into the fold fairly quicker than I thought it would be, but still coming in nonetheless. What Oda said was going to happen is actually happening. The story progression of this chapter is now an 8 out of 10. Now we got to character, and for character, we start off with the character introduction of Otama herself. And then from then on, we have her whole character scheme pretty much well detailed in this chapter. So number 1 was her character introduction. Number 2 is her characterization. And her characterization starts here. Subcomponent number 1, we see her clothes. And her clothes are actually fairly tattered and beat up and stitched up. So that is a clear indication of poverty, the way I see it. Her kimono has patches that were torn up, have mismatching fabric and stitches and that kind of stuff. So Tama is clearly someone, as far as you can tell, for however long she's been here in this Kuri area, she is not someone that's been living in, from jump you could tell, that she's not someone that is wealthy. Quite the opposite, in fact. From jump, you can tell that. Subcomponent 2 is that she, the way it looks, she's eating a devil fruit. And it looks like to be of the Paramecia type, to where she can pinch off a section of her cheek and make a dumpling. Now, potentially, this could be a base power in the terms of ninjutsu Maybe. But as far as we know in One Piece, weird abilities like that tend to belong to a different category. And Luffy himself even states, so you got powers, huh? That's a pretty useful one. And when she threw the dumpling in the monkey's mouth, and the fact that the monkey was going to attack her, but they actually didn't attack her at all, and she tamed the monster by just throwing the dumpling in his mouth, it tastes that good, assumingly. It tastes that good, or it could be that the dumpling itself has other unique properties. We're not too sure at this point in time. That is her ability so far when it comes to character. The next thing for character is we have a sense of what her goals are, where Tama explains that she has a goal of becoming a quote-unquote bewitching kunoichi. That is her ambition so far. And supposedly she's been training to become a kunoichi from a very young age. I'm assuming she's been training for at least a few years prior. But she's currently 8 years old right now, and she's still trying to become a kunoichi. That's her goal. But then the main thing here is that Tama has, if you would, a warrior sense of pride. Because she feeds Luffy the rice and the pickles that she was going to eat on her 8th birthday, which I think is either now or coming up very soon, because she has worked very hard to attain the money to buy that rice, or her master gave her the rice because apparently she can only eat it twice a year, on her birthday and on the New Year's Day. In the meantime, she tends to eat, I think it's called mullet. Yeah, crude mullet. That's what he says. Let me zoom in real quick. Here we go. She weaves hats day in and day out, earning just barely enough coins to survive the day if she sells the whole allotment. At best, she gets an occasional meal of crude mullet or millet. Except for the 2 days a year she's able to have rice. Her day of birth and the New Year's Day. The only 2 times she eat this rice. And on top of that, according to the master, it has already been several days since she's had food from this point. And I quote, let me, come on. Grab it, there we go, my God. Why would Otama cook for you? Do you know how many days it's been since she had anything to eat? And then as he says that, we have her. Stop grumbling tummy. Stop it. It's a warrior's shame. And then she continues on after she arrives. Have mercy on me for cooking the rice without permission. But he saved my life, that's why. Please don't shame me for doing it. So she has this warrior's pride. And previously, she did say before, when she was cooking for Luffy, she wasn't going to eat because she wanted to stay thin. Right here. Actually, okay, stop. Here we go. Not now. So Luffy says, don't you want any? Then she says, no, not now. A kunoichi's got to be light and nimble. So she's keeping a strong will here because she is hungry, truth be told. But this man saved her life, saved her from Kaido's men. And she feels duty bound to feed him a meal at the bare minimum because he's hungry. And by the way, whatever this thing is in the corner, like, is that a Tanuki? Like, I think it's a Tanuki. I'm not too sure. I'm pretty sure it's a Tanuki, but whatever. Moving on. I also want to harken back to this moment where we have her drinking the water. She knows that the water is contaminated, but she took the risk anyway, so her stomach would stop growling in front of, let's say, Luffy, so she wouldn't shame herself in front of the man that saved her life. But on top of that, when you go to the last parts of this chapter, when he talks about the Ace moment, right here, there are safer places she could live, but she chooses to wait here instead. For Ace. For a man who promised he would come back to her. A pirate by the name of Ace. So, her characterization in this chapter is very strong. That alone, for character, for her, by itself, it's amazing. Tama right now is looking like a very strong in-art character. Definitely, a very strong in-art character. And Tama has my respects. Truly. So, Tama's characterization in this chapter, fantastic, without question. But then we move on to her master. So, here is the character introduction of Tama's master. Actually, no, it's right here. So, Tama's master, character introduction right here. And the only thing so far we can say is that he does care about his disciple, or pupil. We also get to see how her master looks, and honestly, I'm not gonna lie to you, like this face, I'm hoping it's red, because right now, yeah, I don't know, man, I don't know. I'm not jumping for joy when it comes to this face. Let me just put it that way. We also get to see how this person is a fairly short stature, and this person has wings. Now, the wings that they have are Bilkin type wings. And if I can just not click on that big arrow, the Bilkin type wings are the homeland of Enel that he destroyed. Now, granted, I'm pretty sure there are more Bilkins out there. Like, they actually are very similar to Uroja's wings, where they kind of flow down and are fairly large like that. So the Skypians and the Shanyans, as far as I recall, they have different wings than that. And then finally, he wields a sword, a katana, that has a very unique hilt, like a flower type of hilt. So this could be a flame blade as well. So for character introductions, we have those two, Otama and Otama's master. For characterization, we have a bit for him, but mainly, clearly, strongly for Tama herself. And then finally, the last part of character is going to be some Luffy stuff. For the Luffy, I can't guarantee it. It looks like his Kambosha Haki may have been upped in general. Maybe. It's not a guarantee. So I, honestly, instead of making the character component thing, I'm making it as a no. So I'm going to leave it for character, just those two. So when it comes to character, the rating for this chapter is going to be a 7.5, which is going to be a good plus. Now, I would say that the story was better because it has more parts in general, number one. But then number two, you have the ace of the end, and you have the Basil Hawking stuff too, which is, I think, very good stuff. Tama's character weight has yet to be seen. I'm assuming that she has character weight, like big character weight in this arc. That's my assumption, but we have to wait and see how that rolls in the arc. So the overall rating for this chapter is going to be a 7.25 out of 10, which is a good to good plus. That is this chapter's rating. A much stronger chapter, a much better chapter than the previous chapter. A 7.25 out of 10 for this chapter of One Piece WA, chapter 911. And when it comes to a few notes, like I said before, I'm not too sure what we're seeing here is a Kambosha Haki thing, because him pinpointing the sniper in this page right here, and I can't even say a sniper because this guy, he was on his weird dinosaur thing, whatever, Velociraptor, and he's aiming at Luffy. But the thing here is, he's already at this distance. Like, it's not Luffy's maximum stretching distance, but they were already charging Luffy. But you can see right here that he is a fair, if we could just not click on the big arrow, thank you. But you can see right here, he is a fair bit away, this guy, from Luffy. So it kind of reminded me of the moment where Sanji took out a sniper in Dressrosa, where he just sensed him. So it looks like Luffy's Kambosha Haki might have improved in a general sense because of the Katakuri fight. Or that just could be basic instincts. We're not too sure. But he takes care of that, and then finally, the monkey he's able to subdue with his will. It's not new, like we've seen it before. And also, another note I want to point out here is that at the beginning of the chapter, during the flashback, note how the Sunny go, when Luffy says, okay, it's my turn to escape, Dory, Sunny, I'll come back for you later. The Sunny go actually looks at Luffy. He's like, dude, what are you talking about, bruh? So, in this chapter, not necessarily a big deal, right? But we know that the Kuwabalter, whatever you want to call them, they exist. And the one for Mary kind of transferred over to the Sunny go. So this could be Oda kind of indicating a little bit of that, where the ships are alive, they have soul, they have that kind of stuff. But you can easily say that Oda's doing that for the laughs, but at the same time, he did for Sanji, where Sanji's fire thing was just for laughs. And now look at Sanji. He gets mad, he blazes up. So, yeah, it's for laughs. But at the same time, this could be an indication of something later on where it's like, yo, my Kuwabalter person is developing, or it's there, or something of that sort. Another note I want to point out for this chapter is that Tama mentions how there was a village in this area of Kuri. So Luffy says, you got a village in the mountains. And then Tama says, no, it's gone now. So there was a village here. And the way I see is that kind of on some Naruto, a village hidden in the... And then also that kind of goes hand in hand with her being a kunoichi, her being a female ninja. And then the master, he kind of came out of nowhere and got the jump on Luffy, which may indicate that he has some kind of shinobi-ish techniques. So it's possible that there is a village hidden in the something in this province of Wano Kuni, in this Kuri area. There could be a shinobi village nearby. And she said, oh, well, it's gone now. But at the same time, it could be a rule to where even if it's like you're saved or something, like you cannot tell anybody about the village. And probably, let's say for the village's safety, if the village if, let's say, is allied with the Kozuki clan, or could actually be gone. But I feel like the village is actually still around. That's what I feel. But at the bare minimum, there was a village here, and now it's gone. And then the last thing, of course, for the notes, is Basil Hawkins. He's going to go to this area because he's a headliner. He has a job to do. But do not send the message up to Kaido yet. I will go. So Hawkins may have ulterior motives. He himself, of course, does not know that it's Luffy who touched down. But at the same time, he may have an ulterior purpose here, because if they're going to be building something against Kaido, because even though Kaido was doing some baby shaking, Hawkins, I'm assuming, still wants to take out Kaido for what Kaido's done against him, against Apu, and Kid, and so on and so forth. Maybe even trying to save Kid in the process. So don't tell Kaido yet. Let me see what's going on in case I can use this to my benefit against Kaido in the future. But right now, he's in on Kaido's side. Because if you mess with Kaido, you're going to get baby shaked. So obviously, guys and gals, I am done. I am done. I hope that you guys and gals enjoyed this double chapter review of One Piece WA, and I'm going to catch y'all later. Be sure to rate the video. It is not that hard to do, especially when I know that you all have a device called there we go. Zaimaosu. You use Zaimaosu to click, rate the video, to click, subscribe, to click on that bell to join the squad, and of course, comment in the comment section down below. Once again, the chapter ratings is going to be a 5.5 for 910 and a 7.25 for 911. So peace, and have a nice goddamn day.